Good Shabbos, everyone. I would like to wish each and every one of you a peaceful, restful, beautiful Shabbos with your loved ones. And this is a very extraordinary Shabbos because it's Shabbat Chazak, which means we conclude the entire third book of the Torah, Vayikra. And had we been in shul, we would all stand on our feet and listen to the last verse and chant out together, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. Let us strengthen ourselves and re-strengthen ourselves and become ever stronger in the continuation of the study of Torah. And I find it very ironic that not one single Torah portion of this entire third book of the Torah was read in the synagogue. The quarantine began at the end of the book of Shemot. And here we are, we're saying Chazak on an entire book, and we haven't read one Torah section in the synagogue. Now I know many of you are wondering, well, very soon, God willing, when we reopen the synagogue and we come back, will we have to read all the Torah portions that we missed? And the answer is actually no, because the commandment to read the Torah portions is only when there's a gathering of 10 or more Jews to read the Torah. But since we were not gathered, we were not obligated. Had we been gathered and not had a Torah, for example, to read from, we would have been obligated to read it, and therefore we would have to make up those Torah portions that we didn't read. But since we were not able to gather, the obligation did not fall upon us, and we will not have to make up and read all the sections that we did not get to read in the synagogue. And the question is, while we may not be in the synagogue to read the Torah portion and conclude the third book of Vayikra and chant out together Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, we still could learn the Torah portion every week, and many of our members told me that they sit down on Shabbat morning themselves or with their spouses and they learn the weekly Torah portion, which is beautiful. One member actually came and said, Rabbi, I need to borrow a chumash because I always come to synagogue to hear the Torah reading. Now I need to do it in my home. So as we read the Torah portion, surely we find tremendous strength. And one of the sources of great strength is in a very powerful verse in this week's Torah portion. You know, yesterday was May 14th. May 14th, 1948, was the day that David Ben-Gurion, who became the first Prime Minister of Israel, and the newly formed Israeli cabinet, declared statehood, fulfilling a dream of Jews for thousands of years to come back to Eretz Yisrael. And 11 minutes after Israel declared its independence, the United States of America, Harry Truman, was the first country to recognize Israel. So we should be very proud, both as Jews, for the establishment of the return to Eretz Yisrael after so many years of exile and diaspora, which ironically is all predicted in this week's Torah portion, where God says you will be exiled and banished and you will suffer tremendously, but there will always be hope, because I will always remember the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and God promises in this week's Torah portion in Bechukotai that I will return you to the land of Israel, to the land of your ancestors. What greater miracle could we have witnessed in our generation? But there's another verse in this week's Torah portion that says, Bishnat HaYovel Hazot, that in the Jubilee year, as we know on the Liberty Bell, it says, proclaim freedom throughout the land for all its inhabitants, that one of the ways that in the Jubilee year freedom was proclaimed was that all land returned to their original owners, which means in Israel you could only lease a piece of land on a long-term lease for 49 years. But in the 50th year, all land would revert to the original owners to give them a chance, a second chance to repossess their land and reacquire their financial independence. So I remember once Rabbi Benjamin Blech was speaking here at the Palm Beach Synagogue, and he said that in his class at Yeshiva University, he once pointed out that it says in the verse that Bishnat HaYovel Hazot Tashuvu, you shall return to your ancestral land. And he said the word Tashuvu is the numerical value of, you know, today we're in the year 2020, which is Tafshin Pei, which we dropped the Hay, because Hay is for the fifth millennium, 5,000, and we just put in Taf Shin, which is 400, 300, and Pei is 80, so we have 5,780. But if you look at the word Tashuvu, it's 5,708. The year 5708 was 72 years ago, which was the year of 1948. So he says here the Torah predicts, and in which year will you return to the land of Israel? B'shnat hayovel azot. Tashuvu, you will return in the year 5708, which is the year of 1948. You will go back to your ancestral homeland. And Rabbi Blech said that there was a student in his class who raised his hand, and he said, Rabbi, can I add something? And Rabbi Blech said, sure, what would you like to add? He said, the word tashuvu is usually always spelled taf, shin, vav, bet, vav, with two vavs. For some reason in this verse, in this week's Torah portion, it says tashuvu with only one vav at the end. The vav in the middle is missing, and that's why it equals 5708, which is obviously the year of 1948. But why is the middle vav missing? So the student said, maybe I could suggest that the Torah is intimating you will return to the land of Israel, but tragically, you will return without the vav, without the sixth letter, the number 6. Tragically, we returned without the 6 million of our brothers and sisters. And that's why it's such a bittersweet commemoration, because on the one hand, we're celebrating that we are home back in Eretz Yisrael, in our destined land, the land that God's eyes are upon constantly, the land of our ancestors and our patriarchs and matriarchs. We are in our own homeland. But at the same time, we paid such a heavy price. But the lesson, obviously, is, as King Solomon says, Yisro na'or mitoch hachoshech. The greatest light comes from the greatest darkness. Sometimes the darker things are, the most difficult things are. From that emerges the greatest light ever. And so too, as we say chazak chazak, v'nis chazek at our homes tomorrow, and we think about the fact that maybe for the first time in our lives, we've missed an entire book of the Torah reading. But we know that we will get even stronger because more light will emerge from the midst of this darkness. And in order to do that, we will discover our inner light, as many have already. And we've seen the outpouring of goodness and kindness and people shining a greater light. And that light will be taken with us post-pandemic to illuminate this world in a way that we've never illuminated it before. You know, I read in the news yesterday that June 1st is the beginning of hurricane season in Florida. And believe it or not, there's already 8 named hurricanes coming our way. And they actually said in the article that sometimes hurricane season could start earlier. There have been years where it started in the middle of May. So here we are, May 15th. We're getting very close. And I was thinking how ironic it is that we're very fortunate that the pandemic didn't happen during hurricane season, because when there's a hurricane coming, the emergency orders are you must evacuate your homes. You must go find shelter in some other place, in a different, safer environment. During this pandemic, the emergency order was you must shelter at home. Now, what would we do if we had 2 emergency orders, one saying you have to stay at home and one saying you have to leave your home? We would be in a big quandary, a big dilemma. So thank God we're able to stay in our homes. And one of the blessings of being able to stay in our homes is that we have in our homes air conditioning and we have lights and we have electricity, because as you know, even when a hurricane isn't so devastating, when we come back, we usually don't have power. And those who live in Florida remember waiting not just hours, but days and sometimes even weeks without air, without light, without electricity, without a refrigerator. And I remember during Hurricane Irma, 2017, it was right before Rosh Hashanah, it was September, and we immediately evacuated. We went up, our family left to Orlando, where we were out of more inland. We were away from the path of the hurricane. And thank God the hurricane didn't do that much damage, but I got a voice message with a video from the mayor of Palm Beach, Mayor Caniglio. She said there was an electrical fire on the lamp, on the electrical pole right alongside the synagogue on Sunset Avenue, and she showed me videos of the fire department putting it out. Thank God there was no fire in the synagogue. I was very grateful. When we drove back to Palm Beach after the hurricane passed, we realized that our entire electrical pole next to the synagogue was disintegrated. And while the light started coming on, the power started coming on in Palm Beach, the power in the synagogue was not turning on. And Shabbat came and we couldn't go into the synagogue because we had no power for that Shabbat. And then it came after Shabbat and it was getting close to Rosh Hashanah. The Jewish New Year was going to start that week and we still didn't have power. And so I was very fortunate. I was able to find a high-up supervisor in FPL. His name is Blake. And he was a religious man and he understood the situation and he came down himself and he brought a crew there and they had to break up the sidewalk and find the connection to the closest pole. And after working for like 24 hours, day and night, with night crews and day crews, they finally, just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, were able to get the power back up in the synagogue. And I remember I was at home and I got a text from Blake. And he wanted to share the good news for me. And I turned on my text, and this is what he wrote. And God said, let there be light. And I think about that story today, and I think about hurricanes. In hurricanes, we lose our physical light. Here, during this pandemic, we have our physical light, but many people feel like their inner light, their spiritual light, their emotional light, their social light is beginning to drain. And so therefore we have to remember that whatever it is, the same 4 words that God begins the Torah with is his message to each and every one of us. Yehi or, let there be light. And when we finish this 3rd book of the Torah, we conclude with the words Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek. And we know that we are getting very close to the time that we will regather together in good health, God willing, and with strength and renewed vigor. And from this darkness will come the greatest light ever. Shabbat Shalom, with blessings and love to you and your entire family.